Welcome back. I am shifting topics this week from a discussion of platform strategy, intellectual property, and other considerations about how to craft a tech strategy to a very important question concerning strategic alliance. This is a central question, one that is complex, involves an awful lot of trade offs, but actually poses a really fundamental question. The notion here is that every firm faces resource constraints. They need to acquire resources that they don't own or control. They need access to markets, perhaps that they don't have access to a distribution channel. They don't own a technology. And so it makes sense to a lot of people to try, rather than try to buy or acquire on their own, that distribution channel, that resource, that skill, that capability, that technology, they would try to form some form of cooperative agreement that would allow both parties to benefit from use of those resources. These are commonplace. Large firms, Microsoft, others, have thousands of strategic alliances with firms across the country. They're quite common, but they're also complex. And especially to the small tech firm, they often pose a challenge because you're proposing to form an alliance in a fast moving, competitive environment that's fraught with uncertainty. And the nature of alliance is that it is fraught with threats. And those threats make it both risky and expensive alternative tool for acquiring resources. The fundamental problem is straightforward. The, with respect to transactions cost, the transactions cost is both the cost of acquiring the good or services that you required, as well as all of the other things that go into governing or arranging for supervising, overseeing the transaction. So this is all costs. Direct costs of the good plus the costs that go into the acquisition, oversight, continued relationship. And with respect to goods and services, of course, the cheapest way to get them, and with involving the least transactions cost, is in the marketplace. You simply go out and buy them. The theory is that when the cost of executing something in the marketplace gets too high because of complexity, difficult to guarantee to provide sufficient guarantees and so forth, the preferred alternative is to internalize it, to do it yourself. That provides you the protection, it provides you the control that you need, and so that the two cheapest ways of acquiring goods and services, of course, are either to buy them in the marketplace or to do it yourself. The in between stage is the land of alliances. And the problem with alliances is that you both have you are trying to deal with both the cost of acquisition of the good, either of which must be dealt with. You could never get below the market cost, um, because that is the value of the good that's being traded. Um, and that economic value has to be covered somehow. So even in an alliance structure, you're not getting something for free. Its costs are built into the terms of trade. But you also are now have to add on to it the added cost of forming the arrangement, forming the agreement. And that is both costly and exposes you to risk because when you enter into an agreement, people are in a position where they can exploit you, they can take advantage, they can steal your idea. And so the fundamental theory is that alliances are actually a very expensive way of acquiring resources. Sometimes they're unavoidable because you cannot get hold of those goods or services otherwise, but they are a quite expensive alternative as a vehicle for getting acquiring those goods and services. The trick then is how does one go about reducing the cost of alliance so that one can use those tools to extend their reach into markets without having to make a direct financial investment, and yet guard against the threats that of opportunism that an alliance naturally entails. The challenge then is that we're looking for complementary assets, resources, things that you need to deliver good or services. They're important in alliances because what's going on is you probably are either seeking to enter a new market, you're trying to develop a new product, you need something that someone else has that you don't, and they have control over that, and you need that in order to enhance the value of your good. Your partner, your alliance partner, may be interested in dealing with you because in lending you or allowing you access to that channel of distribution, both of you can benefit. There's not a competitive threat against you. For example, if they use their distribution channels to distribute your good, which competes in different market space, then perhaps you both benefit by putting added volume through that distribution channel. In the case of commercialization, you may have in R&D, for example, in drugs in particular, you have a variety of specialized activities that must be conducted, and alliances is a quite common way to gain temporary access to needed skills and expertise. Distribution, of course, are standard form of thing, but the goal here is to use alliances and agreements as a tool for accessing complementary resources, things that you need to extend your reach, and hopefully you do so in a way where both parties are able to benefit. When we start to think about how to form an agreement, it's important to consider the nature of the complementary resource. Okay, if it's generic, if it's general purpose, then you're talking about things that should be commonly available, and the general advice here is that things that are generic, things that are commonplace, should not be acquired through alliance. Rather, what you merely want to do is purchase them. If they're specialized, these are customized specific to the innovation, and because they're specialized, it's likely that someone else owns or controls them. You might need an agreement, you might need a license of some form to be able to access or use that good or service. If you enter into an alliance where you have one set of expertise and I have another, you can create what's called a co-specialized resources, where we both make an investment, produce, say, the machine, and we're both dependent on each other to be able to develop that good or service. One of the interesting phenomena in jet aircraft engine production, this almost all the jet engines in the world are produced in northern Connecticut, southern Massachusetts, by one of three companies: Pratt and Whitney, GE, and Rolls-Royce. All three have their production plants located in that area. They're located within miles of each other. And every time a new airframe, like the Dreamliner, comes on the marketplace, all of the companies will bid for that the right to build that engine, because it's a new engine specific to that airframe. And the way they generally do it is they will partner with one another um, to seek that. So it's typically Pratt and Whitney or GE bidding against Rolls-Royce, or Rolls-Royce and Pratt bidding against GE, and so forth. And these are commonplace. These happen all the time. So what you have in a marketplace is um, three large competitors who completely control the marketplace, each partnering with each other at different times to spread the cost and the risk of production of an engine, and basically trading off opportunities to enter the marketplace. It's a fascinating dynamic and an example of how, when you need to do something, produce a good, and you each have something to bring to the table, strategic alliance can be used to create co-specialized resources, skills, tooling, what have you, and that alliance can be a very effective tool in that manner. So the key insight is that when you are talking about forming an agreement, the more unequal the dependence of the parties on each other. So the more if you enter an agreement with a powerful party and you're fairly weak, you're at great risk. And you're at great risk. And the higher the risk, the greater incentive you have to internalize. If you're dealing with somebody who is relatively equal in power and influence, then alliances are much safer. And this is just simply a measure of bargaining power. If they have more bargaining power than you, you're at risk and you should probably do it yourself. If your bargaining power is about equal, then you can forge an agreement. The measure of bargaining power, the measure of dependence, simply is how easy is it or costly is it for you to get out of the deal. If it costs you both about the same, you're equal, you can forge a good deal. If the cost is really hard on you but doesn't matter to them, you are dependent and you are terrifically at risk. And so the advisability of an alliance can be questioned. The character, what you in deciding whether or not to seek an alliance, it's important to think about the qualities, the assets that you are attempting to use, the skills and the resources that you have at hand. What you want to do is understand what it is you're trading, because the characteristics of the things that you're trading or producing or bargaining over influence your ability and the risk that you face. So when you think about the resources, think about it. Are they tangible? Are they codifiable? Are they simple? Are they complex? And you can actually use that as a chart to think about what its qualities are. A piece of equipment, it's tangible, it's codifiable. In this case, a piece of equipment could be relatively simple. That's the sort of thing that you often do not need to use an alliance to get. Know-how, on the other hand, is intangible. It combines both tacit and codifiable things, and it's complex. So what you're talking about here is where, because people have a specific skill that is difficult to transfer, it becomes important that if you want to acquire that, you will probably have to use alliance as a vehicle for accessing and being able to get hold of that complementary asset or resource. The insight here is that simple things can be transferred. They require very little interactions across parties, and so they can be transferred quickly, and probably those things should be sought in the marketplace. Complex and tangible things are difficult to transfer, difficult to use. They take amount of time to transfer, and so what you want to do is form a governing agreement of some form that will allow you to successfully transfer and use that good. And so we turn at this point from thinking a little bit about what the fundamental problem is to questions about types of agreements that are that one uses to gain access to form cooperative agreements across parties.